Hello, and today I'm going to be combining two of my favourite 1940s trends in one dress. So the first trend being that for hooded dresses. So hooded dresses were especially worn by the femme fatales of film noir. So we're thinking images like images like these with Claudette Colbert and other fabulous film stars of the 40s. But of course, just in case you haven't noticed, I'm not really much of a femme fatale, except in my dreams. So I'm going to combine the idea of the hooded dress, but no huffers. So the other trend, which is one close to my heart, is the make do and mend spirit of using up every scrap of fabric that you have. So I do have, should have worn one today actually. I do have 1940s dresses that are actually made from no huffers, no puffers, actually made from like 3 or 4 different dresses all stitched together to make a new dress. So saving the parts of a dress that could be saved. I imagine, to be honest, knowing vintage dresses, it's unlikely any of the underarms could ever be saved. So yes, so using fabric from different dresses, I should say, to make a new dress. And of course, the extreme end of this was to literally use every scrap. So you do find, quite rarely actually, because I imagine they were just got worn out by their nature, but you do find patchwork skirts and dresses, true vintage patchwork skirts and dresses for sale. Occasionally they're very popular. If they come up for sale, they're not for sale very long. So my plan is to combine the femme fatale hooded dress, but make it more of like a kind of house robe, house dress, by making it with patchwork. And the patchwork that I'm going to use is genuine scraps. So you could buy fabric specially, in which case you would be able to get a colour combination that might all be completely in harmony. I mean, I like to think mine is too. Mine is scraps from the ragdoll making business that my mother used to do. So they're all scraps from ragdoll dresses, which is quite good because all the patterns are obviously very small because they were destined for dolls. And she's always drawn to similar colours, rather kind of blues and pinks and sage greens. So there is a natural kind of colour harmony. And the pattern that I'm going to use is this one. And this is a pattern there is a 1940s pattern for a hooded dress, which sadly is not in my possession. But this pattern I got through being a member of Tuppence Halfpenny's Patreon, and she does a lot of patterns which I love, and she tends to, I don't know how she'd feel about this description. But to me, she likes 30s, 40s and 50s, but she tends to do sleeve styles from the 30s and 40s, which I love, the puffy type sleeve styles. With the more hourglass, Charlotte got a very hourglass figure herself. Lucky her. So she does the sort of more nipped in waist and fuller skirt. So to me, her designs combine that rather fabulous puffy sleeves and ruched bodice and of the 30s and 40s, but with the fuller skirts of the 50s. They're very attractive. So I'm a member of her Patreon for her patterns, and this is one of them. And as you can see, it's constructed with princess seams, so always really flattering. And the wonderful hood and the puffy sleeves, I'm going to do the short sleeve version. And I'm also going to do the zip up the front version, which I want to do anyway. Even though it could be said I've done enough buttonholes in the last month to last me a while, I'm actually doing the zip up dress, not just to avoid buttonholes, but because there's something about a kind of long zip up dress that I really like. I think it does buy into that house roby look too, which I want my patchwork dress to look like, you know, a kind of 40s house dress that lady could wear every day. Oh, and I forgot to say what I'm wearing, which is this rather flopped back down on the sofa. This very pretty print, I think, 1930s dress. So it's got its little covered buttons and the little kind of ruching down from the shoulders, and it's made from that lovely crepe like rayon that I was talking about on the comments with one of you. So yes, I shall get on and we'll see how my patchwork hooded dress turns out. This is my hand crank serrata machine, which has a lovely decal of golden lions on it. And these hand crank machines are perfect for doing little pieces of patchwork. They look beautiful just set out, and then you can just do a little bit of patchwork when you've got time. And here are all the pieces laid out on my pieces of patchwork. I tried to reduce waste and labour by just doing patchwork that was slightly larger than the pattern pieces, and just cutting out here. That didn't always work, and I had to fill in little bits of patchwork where the pattern piece was a little larger than the piece of patchwork that I'd made. And then the other thing to point out with this is that when you're using lots of fabric scraps, mine were mainly in 100% cotton, but there are a few little pieces of poly cotton, and then you have to be really careful when you're ironing them because they don't all iron to the same heat. And this is the hood. So the hood I'm going to line with this piece of sage green, which is actually an old sheet. This is a project entirely of scrap fabric, and each piece is cut out twice. And of course you have to make sure that the pieces are all cut on the grain. And of course, because it's patchwork, I was always finding little bits of loose threads to snip off. And here you can see where I hadn't done enough patchwork to cover a pattern piece, and I had to add little pieces of fabric in a bit later. And then I stitched all the seams. So this is quite a straightforward construction with all those princess seams. And as the hood is going to be lined in the sage green, I made two hoods, one patchwork and one of the lining, and then I joined them right side to right side, matching the central top seam as you can see me doing here, and then pinning all those edges together before I need to stitch them. And you can see inside the hood here all those pinked edges. I decided to pink all the edges of the patchwork, which, believe me, took quite a long time. I suppose you could overlock all the edges, but I promise you that even pinking them took hours and hours. Yes, so here the hood is just being pinned all around, and you can see it's a really spacious hood. You can see it's left open at the base where it's going to be joined to the neckline, and then I'm just stitching the lining and the patchwork part of the hood together. And the pattern actually suggests lining the entire dress, but I didn't have enough of the green sheet for that, so I just lined the hood here, just bagging that out, the hood, the front facing edge, and I also did some patch pockets in the green, and I just finished the neck edge with green bias binding. And this is the hood. Obviously needs a press, but you can see that it's starting to take shape, and there it is. You can see that the neck area of the hood is quite narrow, quite small, and that's because this is actually quite a high neck dress, but it's going to have that zip front openings. So now I'm on to the final stages of sewing in the zip, drawing up the gathers on the puffed sleeves before adding them to the dress, and making the pockets which have a overlapping flap, and I chose to do these in the green fabric to form a contrast on the front of the dress. And I also made, it wasn't in the pattern, but I made a little belt, and I chose this mother of pearl square buckle to echo the squares of the patchwork, and again adding a little contrast with the green. And then I made little sleeve supports so those puff sleeves would stand up nicely, and I just went round most of the edge and then stopped a few inches from the end so that I could turn my sleeve support right side out, and they're just little half circle sleeve supports. And then just to show you the inside of the dress, where you can see how the lining is turned under and slip stitched down a few millimeters away from the zipper teeth. And to show you the dress, I decided that the dogs and I would visit my father, not just for the 3 cameramen, but also because he lives in this pretty London street, which is a patchwork of colours. And I thought, what better place to show off my patchwork dress than in a patchwork street? And we certainly weren't alone. This street is so popular with Instagrammers. We were trying to sort of find a little space on the pavement where there weren't already people out with their cameras, and even those little selfie tents. I didn't have one of those, but yeah, there were people doing multiple changes in tents, and I had to say most people were kind of younger and trendier than me, but they were all extremely nice, and I was a bit different, to be honest. They were all waving at me saying, "Oh, you're so pretty," which was charming of them, given as I say they were half my age and dressed very differently to me. The dogs weren't terribly impressed by this walk, which seemed to be generally strolling around in circles, not going anywhere. Anyway, you can see my patch pockets and my contrast belt and that very large spacious hood. I just kind of pull it up so it frames the face really nicely. There it is. I might make a few little tweaks to the fit of the dress now that my YouTube weekly panic deadline is over, but overall I am quite happy with it. I actually think, even though this is a 40s dress, the skirt is quite full, Charlotte of Tuppence Halfpenny does tend to put on rather full skirts, which I like because 40 skirts can be a bit skimpy. Obviously, there was rationing, and that's why, but a fuller skirt is always slightly kinder on one's lower tummy area. I do find some of those 40s skimpier skirts can get a bit caught on that particular area. So I think the patchwork does benefit from just those little plain contrast details on the lining, on the pockets, on the buckle. And also, I forgot to undo the zip a bit just to show you the lining as well. The dogs are saying, please, please, can we go for a walk? Enough of this posing around. They did actually walk here. We did spend an hour walking here, which is why my hair is looking a bit windblown before even the start of the photo shoot. So don't feel too sorry for them. They have actually already done an hour's walk, but anyone with a border collie knows an hour's walk is but nothing. She still has lots of energy left. Pixie, my little miniature border collie, as she was described by Serbian Rescue. I don't really know what's in her. Lots of different breeds, I would imagine. So thank you very much for watching us again, and a little goodbye from us before we go on a proper walk, she hopes. Actually, I'm going in to have some lunch, so I shall very much look forward to seeing you next week, and please like this video.